Today I'm going to show you how to crochet a crocodile stitch done on a diagonal. So you start in the corner here working your rows so that you can make your increases, and it gives it a really cool look. The crocodile stitch is kind of fun because it's dimensional, so it really looks like scales. For this particular sample I used a variegated yarn with different blues and greens because I wanted it to kind of look like a mermaid's tail. So I'm going to show you how to make this stitch. To start, we're going to make a slip knot, and we're going to make 6 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We want to make a ring, so we're going to take our crochet hook and put it into the first chain, and we're going to do a slip stitch, basically pulling our yarn through both of those loops to create a ring of stitches. I like to turn my work over so that way I'm working with the flatter side and I don't have that bump in my way. That will be hidden under our stitches, and we can weave our tail in so it looks nice at the end. We are going to start making our first scale. So we're going to chain 3, and we're going to do 4 double crochets into this ring. So this is our first one. Two, 3, 4. So we now actually have a total of 5 pieces coming up. We have our 4 double crochets as well as that 1 chain 3. We're going to chain 1. This is going to make the tip of our scale. And still in this ring, we're going to make 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there is our first scale. If you like at this point, you can go ahead and weave your tail in. Makes it a little bit easier so it doesn't get in your way for your project. I have woven the ends in, and now I'm ready to start the next row. Once our first scale is done and we're starting our next row, we're actually going to create a foundation row first, so we have an anchor point to put our crocodile scales onto. So we are going to chain 3, and we're going to put our hook in here in between our 2 double crochets, and we're going to make another double crochet. So that is our first set of posts that we will use for putting our scales onto. We're then going to chain 1, and we're going to do 2 double crochets in this opening here. So our second post set, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do another 2 double crochets in this area here, duplicating what we have on this side so it's nice and even. So there is our foundation row for our second row. So just like we had done before, where we chained 3, did 4 double crochets, chain 1, 5 double crochets to make 1 scale, we're going to do the same thing here. Now we had this ring as our foundation, which we used to create our stitches around. So we're going to use these posts. So this will be the post for the first half of the stitch, and this will be the post for the second half of the stitch. So we're going to chain 3, and then around this post here we're going to do 4 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And just like we had done before, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to do 5 double crochets around the second post here. As I work, I tend to move my project around and manipulate it, so however it's easiest for you, flip it upside down, sideways, however it works. So this post here, I'm going to manipulate my project so I can hold that post much more easier. And we're now going to do 5 double crochets. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to chain 1. So I'm going to open this up. So there is our first crocodile stitch finished on the second row. Now we're going to go on to the next post, but we're going to skip one. See how when you lay this down it kind of overlaps that post? So we're going to skip that. We're going to go on to this one, and we're going to do the same thing like we did before. We're going to use these points, the post there, as our anchor and what we're using as our foundation. So this post here, I'm going to kind of grab that, and we're going to do 5 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to chain 1 for the point. I'm going to open this up so you can see. So see how we did our first half of the scale? So now we're going to do 5 double crochets along this half here. And I'm just moving my project around because it's easier for me to manipulate. Alright, so we're doing 5 double crochets around this post. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there is our second row completed. To do our third row, we need to do a foundation setup first. So we're going to chain 3 in the corner. This spot here where the last 2 double crochets came together, we're going to do a double crochet. So there is our first set of posts. Chain 1, and then we're going to do 2 double crochets in this opening here. 1, 2. So we have 2 sets of posts done. Chain 1. We're also going to do a post here where the 2 crocodile stitches meet. You'll notice it's a little bit bulkier in this spot because we have the meeting point there, as well as part of our foundation row from our previous row. So see how we have those stitches? So we're going to do 2 double crochets, kind of layering all of this up together. So you want to put your crochet hook kind of in that spot there, and you're going to do 2 double crochets through there. So see how it kind of holds down your crocodile stitch? Don't worry about that this shows. It's going to end up being hidden once we get to our next row. Chain 1, and we're going to do 2 double crochets in this opening here. Chain 1, and then our last 2 in this opening here. So we now have the foundation posts for our third row. So just like we did here, we need to make our crocodile stitches and our things around those posts. So we're going to do the same thing. Chain 3, and then we're going to do 4 double crochets around this post. So we're aiming for getting our hook in here. I'm going to start doing these double crochets quicker. I'm going to assume that you know how to do them now. So that's 2, 3, 4. We're going to chain 1, that's our point, and bring this around so you can see. So there's the first part of our crocodile stitch, and we're going around this post here for the second half of it. And again, I'm going to just kind of turn this around upside down and sideways so I can hold that a little bit easier. And we're going to do 5 double crochets. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to chain 1. So you can start seeing the pattern now. So we're ready to do our next scale. Remember, we're going to skip the one post underneath because see how it overlaps, and we're going to do this post here. You'll kind of notice how the scales start alternating, and that gives it a much nicer layout. So we're shooting for this post right here. This is going to be what we are doing our 5 double crochets around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're just doing them all in that one spot. Chain 1. I'm going to lay this out again so you can see. So we have our first half of the scale done on that post. So here's the other post. So we're going to do our next set of 5 double crochets around that post. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then chain 1. So now we have our next scale done. And you see how before, remember there was a bit of a gap, but because this scale is over top, it hides the gap, so it looks layered. It looks really nice. We're going to do one more scale on this row. Again, we're going to skip this post. We're going to work on this post here. Open them up with your fingers so it's a little bit easier. We're going to do 5 double crochets on this post, chain 1, and then 5 double crochets on this post. Again, I'm going to turn my project sideways and grab that post because it's just easier to manipulate. And 5 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then chain 1. I'm going to lay it out. There's my last post. So we're going to do our last 5 double crochets for this row on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 3 complete rows of our crocodile stitch. If you want to keep going, we're basically doing the same thing. We're repeating the same exact pattern. The only difference is we're just going to end up making more posts because this line is now getting longer. So you just keep going until you have your blanket however big you want it to be, and then we're going to start doing decreases. Once we have made our project however big we want it to be, we are going to change how we do the foundation row for our decreases. If we kept going with our posts here in the corner, our project would keep getting bigger and bigger, and that's not what we want. So rather than our first post being in this spot, we actually want it in this opening here. But we need to get our yarn from here to this spot. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do a slip stitch into that opening to get our yarn to where it needs to be. We're going to chain 4, so 2, 3, 4, and then this spot here is where we're going to do our first set of 2 double crochets like we have before. So it's just our corners that are going to be different. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, and then here, like before, 2 double crochets. So 1, 2, chain 1, this spot, 2 double crochets. 1, 2, and chain 1. Now we want to get over here, but remember how we had a slightly different setup here? So what we're going to do is just 1 double crochet, because we're not actually going to use these corners for posts. They're really just kind of anchors so that it gives a nice frame. Once we have that post, we're going to chain 1, and what we're going to do is start doing our scales, but we're going to go to this post here, because remember how they alternate like this? So I don't actually want to do a stitch here, I want to do it in this spot. So we're going to do 5 double crochets, chain 1, 5 double crochets on that post. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then chain 1, and there's that other post, so I'm going to bring my project around and I'm going to do 5 double crochets on that post. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then chain 1. So the scale part really is not any different than before. The only difference is just how we started our row. We have an extra little chain here that we put into the ends. So again, we're going to skip this section and we're going to go over here. And we're going to do 5 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 1, and there's my post, so I'm going to grab that post and we're going to do 5 double crochets on that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how our decrease looks. So from the front, looks good, looks the same. When you flip it over on the back, it'll be a little bit different here because we have these 2 extra chains on the side. That at first it doesn't really look like they do anything, but they actually give it a good anchor. I'll show you what I mean at the end. So once we have that row done, we're going to decrease again. So we need to chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch into this opening here. Because again, we don't want to do increases, we're decreasing. We're going to chain 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. This spot here is where we want to do our set of double crochets. So 1, 2, we're going to chain 1, and then this spot here is where we're going to do 1 double crochet. Again, it's just an anchor point, and then our 1 chain. So now we have space to do 1 scale. So same thing like before, we're going to do 5 double crochets on this post, chain 1, and then 5 double crochets on that post. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and chain 1. So there's the first part of my scale, and I'm going to come around to this post here. Again, sorry, I do move my projects upside down everywhere. And we're going to do 5 double crochets on that post. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's our last one, so I'm just going to cut, and we're going to do a slip stitch. To finish that off, and then just go ahead and weave your ends in. So there's your finished piece. So there's our finished sample doing the crocodile stitch on the diagonal. So we started in the center here. This was our first row in the corner, and we worked our way out doing our increases, and then we worked our way in doing our decreases. One thing I just wanted to point out, when we were doing our decreases, I had you do these extra stitches on the ends. So you had a chain 4, and then you had a double crochet on one end. And a lot of people ask, well, why bother doing that if you aren't going to use them as for your scales? Well, I did a sample here where it's the exact same thing, but I didn't do those end bits. And the thing you can see right away is it's very floppy. There's not as much stability and support on this project. It just kind of goes wherever it wants to. It doesn't lay as flat and as nice as this. So having those extra bits on the end, even though they seem kind of pointless, does actually give it more stability and structure. So I really would encourage putting those in the way I was teaching you in the pattern. Well, I hope you had fun and learned how to do something new, and try it out with your yarns and see what you think.